Right, shalom, shalom, giving all praises, honor, and glory to our power, Yahweh, Hashem, Yahweh, Shah, Hashem, Kodash, to honors to the apostles, the bishops, and the elders, a great millstone. Peace and blessings to the hopeful elect of the tabernacles of David, scattered throughout the four corners of the earth, wherever you may be, shalom, Yeshua, shalom. All right, before we get started, I want to read something here. Really, it comes into play further into the chapter, but I wanted to read it pretty much to get it out the way. And actually I had this somewhere else, but you know how it is. Sometimes you have pages saved up, they disappear, and you can't get them back. And even when you type in the same thing, exact same thing you searched before, but you never get the same search. But I ended up finding this here, and so I'm just gonna read what I want from here. So listen up. So it says Caesar was a family name most famously borne by Gaius Julius Caesar. All right, and what this is going into, which it comes into play further down in the chapter in the book of Acts 25. All right, because you'll get confused if you're not familiar with who these names are and these titles. You either just go along with what's written, or you'll be confused about who it's talking about. And so we're going to get into that later, but this particular thing I want to read and get out of the way. All right, going into the term Augustus. All right, when Augustus is mentioned in Acts chapter 25, it is not talking about the second of those 12 Caesars, who was Augustus. All right, Julius, and you had Augustus. All right, that's not who it's talking about. Okay, it was taken on as a universal term, just like Caesar. All right, was carried on. All right, Caesar's pretty much saying king, no different as in what I think is Germany, how they would say Kaiser, or maybe what's the other word? Sultan, something like that. All right, it's a general term that was carried on, Caesar, that is. So that's how this Augustus name was attached. All right, because it really was a particular family, and then it moved on to other Caesars using that term Augustus as well in their names. So it says Caesar was a family name most famously borne by Gaius Julius Caesar, who was the first of the 12 Caesars, who adopted his grandnephew Octavian and his son and heir. And that is Augustus that we're talking about. Or not that we're talking about, but that we just talked about, the second Caesar, right? Julius, then Augustus, right? He was the second. All right. That's Octavian there. It says, and his son and heir. It says Octavian was the man who first came to absolute power and is judged as the first emperor, which is false because Julius is the first. All right. But anyways, and then you'll hear a lot, scholars say that often, where even in the blue letter, all right, in the scriptures, that's off. All right. We'll mention Augustus as the first Caesar, and he's not. Julius was the first Caesar. And then it goes on to Augustus being the second, Tiberius after that, and so on and so forth. Caligula, Claudius, Nero. All right, so it says, upon being granted the powers that made him emperor, he was also given the title Augustus, by which we know him today. His official regnal name was Imperator Caesar Augustus. Here is a coin showing his name and title. All right, so you see that coin right there. It says Augustus had no sons and went through a series of heirs, ultimately settling on his stepson Tiberius, who was the third ruler, all right, to come into power. All right, the one who in the scriptures mentions he reigned to the half a time of the second. That was Tiberius. He reigned for 22 to 23 years. Augustus from like 44 to 46 years, somewhere give or take. It says he adopted Tiberius into the Caesar family upon his accession. He took the title Augustus as well. I'm talking about Tiberius. He took the title of Augustus as well, and his regnal name was Imperator Tiberius Caesar Augustus. This process continued with the men we know today as Caligula, Claudius, and Nero, all being adopted into the Caesar family and taking the title Augustus. So why don't we call any of them? Why don't we call any of them this? It says it is strictly to avoid confusion. Caligula, for example, was actually named Gaius Julius Caesar. That's the name. That's the same name as the more famous guy who was killed on the Ides of March. Right, talking about the first guy. Historians have settled. I believe they put him to death because it was pretty much about power. Right, he was going to become like what's the I forget the term called for it, when it's just one person has all the power, and so they feared that. All right, and so they put him to death. It says that's the same name as the more famous guy who was killed on the Ides of March. Historians have settled on a common use name for each of these men. In the case of Caligula, it is a boyhood nickname that meant little boots. Nero killed himself during a revolt, and I just thought about something. You notice how what they do with Jake, especially the so-called Negro, knowing that that's the tribe of Judah. Notice how they always mock us for nicknames and things of that nature, as if these heathens don't do it too. All right, as if the heathens don't have nicknames, but they always attempt to find a way, all right, to put the Israelites in a bad light, especially dealing with the tribe of Judah. Just a random thought though. Nero killed himself during a revolt in the year 68. All right, because we know up until that time to 68 it marks the point of the year of the four emperors, which was in 69. All right, so Nero killed himself during a revolt in the year 68, and the line of adoptions into the Caesar family came to an end. He was succeeded by a man named Galba, who had no connection to all the Caesar family and the emperors who had come before him. By that time, however, Rome had been ruled by Caesars for nearly 100 years. Galba claimed to be part of the Caesar family through an ancestor. He also took the title Augustus, you see, it says, and was officially known as Servius Galba Caesar Augustus. Galba didn't last long, and Rome went through two more emperors before the Eastern general Vespasian arrived with an army and took power in 69, which was in December of 69, and his reign carried over into 70. All right, we get one of our high point years, 70 AD. Okay, and Vespasian reigned for 10 years, 69 to 79. All right. Vespasian also claimed vague connections to the Caesar family and claimed the name upon accession. So also using the title Augustus. You see, it is doubtful anyone believed the Caesar connection, but by that point, it was becoming traditional and more of a title itself than a family name. Emperors continued to call themselves both Caesar and Augustus for the next 100 plus years. All right. It says in 286, the Emperor Diocletian decided that the empire was too large and unwieldy to be ruled by one man. He instituted a new system called the Tetrarchy, under which there would be a senior and junior ruler. Actually, we don't need this, but I guess we'll read it now. It says, what is because I guess it's good information. It says, yep, the Tetrarchy, under which there would be a senior and junior ruler in the east and west. The senior rulers would be called Augustus, and the junior rulers would be called Caesar. The idea was that the Augusti would be, which is pretty much plural for Augustus, or having two Augustus, or those titles, right? So the Augusti would abdicate after a few years of rule and promote their Caesars to succeed them, and new Caesars would then be chosen. The system had problems from the outset, and not surprisingly, nobody but Diocletian himself was willing to abdicate, and the Caesar didn't like waiting around for power. Yeah, nobody wants to be taken out of power, and nobody really wants to wait around for power, all right, because they may never reach that point. So you had, oppositions from both sides, from the Augusti and from the Caesars, right? So it says a series of wars were fought, and eventually one man named Constantine, all right, we know about him. I believe that's Constantine the Great, or is it Constantine the First? It says came out on top and took sole rule. However, the idea that the ruler was the Augustus and his named successor was Caesar stuck and was used thereafter. Even after the western parts of the empire fell in the late 5th century, the east continued on, and its rulers continued to use the titles Augustus and Caesar for hundreds more years. All right. So that's that. I want to read that going into the title Augustus, and because it comes up later, so I don't want you to be confused on the title Augustus. All right. There's other things that we can get into, but for now, we can get rid of this and we can jump over to Acts 25. All right. So, chapter 1. I'm not chapter 1. We ain't going back to chapter 1. Acts 25, verse 1. All right. Paul before Festus. So it says, now when Festus was coming to the province, after 3 days he ascended from Caesarea to Jerusalem. All right. It says, then the high priest and the chief of the Jews informed him against Paul and besought him and desired favor against him, that he would send for him to Jerusalem, laying wait in the way to kill him. All right. And that was what was on their mind. All right. To put Paul to death. Because basically, when you're going back into ancient times, right? Now, whether they knew or not, I'm not sure if they knew or maybe they found out later. But the point being, all right, in the ancient times, all right, a Roman citizen could not be put to death without having a court case, all right, and being able to come before his accusers, right? So basically, they wanted to seek to put him to death, period. All right, without a trial, without it, they just want to basically do wrongfully, all right, put him to death wrongfully, okay, without a cause, all right, simply because basically their emotions were flared up, their feelings were hurt. Okay, and they were just wicked. But being that Paul had Roman citizenship, they couldn't just put him to death. All right, and we already read the account where he escaped the first death, where they were going to lie in wait for him. Those 40 plus men. All right, and so he was taken into custody. Okay, and so here you are, with the situation here, same deal. All right, they want to put him to death wrongfully without a trial, without a case, probably because they were in fear that he would get off on his case and walk free. Which in that case, what do you think they were going to do then if he got off in the case? They were still going to try to kill him. All right, so it was a wrongful, accusation or false accusation, I should say, and they were trying to put him towards a wrongful death. But he had Roman citizenship, so he couldn't just face death without a trial and being able to face his accusers, according to Roman law. So it says, and they desired favor against him, that he would send for him to Jerusalem, laying wait in the way to kill him. But Festus answered that Paul should be kept at Caesarea, and that he himself would depart shortly thither. All right, it says, let them therefore, said he, which among you are able, go down with me and accuse this man, if there be any wickedness in him. So if you got anything against this man, why don't you come down, all right, and then present your case there. And if he's tried in your favor, all right, for being in the wrong, he will be punished accordingly. But that was the point. If you have anything against this man, you have to come down there and present your case and your evidence against them. And as they say in the court of law, it's not it's not what you know, it's what you can prove. Okay. So you can say anything, all right? You can bring any kind of false information on a person, fake paperwork, or fake statements or whatever, all right? But can it be proven? Okay, you can say anything you want to say, but can it be truly proven with facts? And they can't do that. It says, and when he had tarried among them more than 10 days, he went down unto Caesarea, and the next day, sitting on the judgment seat, commanded Paul to be brought. And when he was come, the Jews which came down from Jerusalem stood round about and laid many grievous complaints against Paul, which they could not prove. You see, they laid a lot of complaints. Let's get the word grievous. Grievous complaints against Paul, which they could not prove. It's not about what you say. Can you prove what you're saying? All right. Even if the judge hear your case or whatnot, and they actually wanted to believe you, you still have to produce them evidence so that they can rule accordingly. Heavy in weight, severe, stern, all right? Violent, cruel, unsparing. It says, but it says, which they could not prove. It says, while he answered for himself, neither against the law of the Jews, neither against the temple, nor yet against Caesar, have I offended in anything at all. Yeah, he's saying that I haven't offended anywhere, not against Caesar. I haven't offended in the Jewish law, okay? And I haven't offended against the temple, because remember, they were talking about, he brought Gentiles into the temple and so on and so forth. Those were lies, all right? It was just an accusation with no proof behind it. Okay, it was basically hearsay. It says, but Festus, willing to do the Jews a pleasure, answered Paul and said, wilt thou go up to Jerusalem and there be judged of these things before me? Then said Paul, I stand at Caesar's judgment seat, where I ought to be judged. Basically, I'm right here. This is where the matter is going down, right here. Okay. To the Jews have I done no wrong, and thou very well knowest. And he's basically saying, I ain't done nothing wrong. All right. Because see, the Roman, I forget the name of the term that they have for, because there's two different terms for it, I forget them. But Roman, civil law. All right. And this case had nothing to do with any kind of civil, thing, going on with Roman law. All right. It didn't even have anything, any kind of civil thing to go on with the Jewish laws. All right. But this was a more religious matter, which is why you would hear, like in previous chapters, all right, where they were saying that, this thing is pretty much up to you. All right. This is according to your laws. All right. This ain't got nothing to do with, anything violating Roman law. This is a religious matter. So this is up to you guys to figure this thing out. Okay. But now it's reached the higher courts, which involves the Romans. So they can't, a religious matter just doesn't work here. All right. If this man can't be tried by something more solid, then there's no real accusation. All right. As far as your religious aspects go, you have to figure that out. All right. We don't, basically from their eyes, it's like we only deal with real matters. All right. And your religious, matters are not realistic to us. All right. Because you have to understand, the Romans allow them to, worship, openly, whatever they want to worship. They just had to be tributaries and stay in line and, so on and so forth, right? Which, once again, we mentioned that before. How do you think the gospel was able to spread? Because they were able to worship what they wanted to worship. And it says, then said Paul, I stand at Caesar's judgment seat, where I ought to be judged. To the Jews have I done no wrong, as thou very well knowest. For if I be an offender or have committed anything worthy of death, I refuse not to die. All right. And that's how confident he was. All right. In his matter, in his side of things. And of course, and he had Yahushua with him anyways. All right. But yeah, it's like, if I did anything wrong, hey, what can I do? All right. What am I going to say? I'm not going to refuse. You're going to put me to death? So be it. But he said that confidently because he knew he didn't do anything wrong. All right. It says, I refuse not to die. But if there be none of these things whereof these accuse me, no man may deliver me unto them. I appeal unto Caesar. All right. So it says, then Festus, when he had conferred with the council, answered, hast thou appealed unto Caesar? Unto Caesar shalt thou go. And after certain days, King Agrippa and Bernice came unto Caesarea to salute Festus. Now, here's where we have to put a pause on it real quick. I don't think anything, we'll get her first. I don't think anything will probably come up for Bernice K. Yeah, I didn't think so. All right. The eldest daughter of Herod Agrippa first. But this is what I wanted to go into. Probably doesn't mention anything for her because she's not important. Yeah, but these were Herodians. All right, and that's really not what I want to mention, but these are Herodians. Now, it says King Agrippa. Now, this is something we talked about before. All right, or in the opening, really, knowing who we're dealing with. It just says King Agrippa, but this is a particular Agrippa. All right, so it says the name of a ruling family in Israel at the time of the Messiah. Now, this Agrippa we're dealing with is Agrippa II. So what we want to do is jump over here, all right, and go and get to a little back, all right, a little story here on Agrippa II, because this is who we're dealing with in this chapter. And also we're going to pull up, dealing with the Caesar as well, all right, which is once again why we read what we read in the opening, all right, because it just says, Augustus, all right, or Caesar or whatever, all right, and here it just says Agrippa, but this is a particular Agrippa. This is Agrippa II, Herod Agrippa II. It says, son of Herod Agrippa I. When his father died, he was a youth of 17. In AD 48, he received from Claudius Caesar the government of Chalcis with the right of appointing the Jewish high priest, together with the care and oversight of the temple at Jerusalem. 4 years later, Claudius took from him Chalcis and gave him instead a larger domain of Batanea, Trachonitis, and Galenitis, with the title of king. To those reigns Nero in AD 53 added Tiberius and Tarichae and Paraean Julius with 14 neighboring villages. He is mentioned in Acts 25 and 26. Let's see what they got here. Okay, I don't really know where y'all at. 26 didn't come. Okay, of whom I have no certain. Okay, Agrippa, because it just says Agrippa. So anyways, it says he is mentioned in Acts 25 and Acts 26, which we're in Acts 25 right now. And this pretty much, doubles back to what we're reading, which is why we came over here. Because it's talking about Herod Agrippa II. He is mentioned in Acts 25 and 26. In the Jewish war, although he strove in vain to restrain the fury of the seditious and bellicose populace, he did not desert to the Roman side. After the fall of Jerusalem, he was vested with praetorian rank and kept the kingdom entire until his death, which took place in the 3rd year of the Emperor Trajan, the 73rd year of his life, and the 52nd of his reign. He was the last representative of the Herodian dynasty, and these Herods were Edomites, right? Going back to their father, Antipater of Idumea, which is literally his title, Antipater the Idumean. And we know the Idumeans are Edomites, which are the so-called white people, all right? So you have the understanding of this Herod, okay? Now, let's read the AMP, all right, and clarify some other things. So right here, verse 11 in the AMP says, therefore, if I am guilty and have committed anything worthy of death, I do not try to escape death. But if there is nothing to the accusations which these men are bringing against me, no one can hand me over to them. I appeal to Caesar Emperor Nero. All right. So this Caesar here is talking about Nero. Okay. So it says, then Festus, after conferring with the men who formed his council, answered, you have appealed to Caesar. To Caesar ye shall go. Now, several days later, here it is, Agrippa II, the king, and Berenice, his sister, arrived at Caesarea and paid their respects to Festus, the new governor. Now, you may think, well, what about the Augustus thing that you mentioned there? So let's go to the NLT. All right. Actually, it might not pop up here in the NLT. It's probably down below in the KJV. As a matter of fact, we'll probably read into it because it also says Caesar here. Let's go back to the KJV and keep reading. All right, so we'll make these other points here as we go through the chapter. So it says, I appeal to Caesar. So we understand this Caesar is talking about the Emperor Nero. All right. See, the surname of Julius Caesar, which adopted by Octavius Augustus and his successors afterwards, became a title and was appropriated by the Roman emperors as part of their title. All right, going to Augustus as well as Caesar. Okay, I'm going back to why we read what we read before we started the chapter. All right, so you can have these understanding of these things. So it says, then Festus, when he had conferred with the council, answered, hast thou appealed unto Caesar? Unto Caesar shalt thou go. And after certain days, King Agrippa, which is Agrippa II, and Bernice came unto Caesarea to salute Festus. And when they had been there many days, Festus declared Paul's cause unto the king, saying, there is a certain man left in bonds by Felix, about whom, when I was at Jerusalem, the chief priest and the elders of the Jews informed me, desiring to have judgment against him, which is death, all right? They were desiring to put him to death. To whom I answered, it is not the manner of the Romans to deliver any man to die, but for that he which is accused have the accusers face to face. You see, we mentioned that, right? It says, and have license to answer for himself concerning the crime laid against him, all right? Being able to, present your case in the court, right? Therefore, when they were come hither without any delay on the morrow, I sat on the judgment seat and commanded the man to be brought forth, against whom, when the accuser stood up, they brought none accusation of such things as I supposed. All right. In other words, everything that they were saying, they could not prove. All right. And scriptures, which, let me get this. I believe I have in this drop down page, I have a few scriptures put up where it says, the 2 or 3 witnesses, right? And all these different scriptures here, Matthew 18:16. But if he would not hear thee, then take thee 1 or 2 more, that in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, every word may be established, right? 2 Corinthians 13:1. This is the 3rd time I am coming to you. In the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses shall every word be established. 1 Timothy 5:19. Against an elder receive not an accusation, but before 2 or 3 witnesses. Hebrews 10:28. He that despised Moses' law died without mercy under 2 or 3 witnesses. Deuteronomy 17:6. Going to Moses' law, right? At the mouth of 2 witnesses or 3 witnesses shall he that is worthy of death be put to death. But at the mouth of 1 witness he shall not be put to death. And as many as people that they had come together, they were all lying against him. They all sought to put him to death wrongfully. Okay? So that's why it was so important in that Roman law, all right, in that Roman court, they had to produce the evidence against Paul because or not the accusation, the final accusation, but their final judgment was to put him to death. Okay, so they were definitely going to have to state their case and prove it. Deuteronomy 19:15. 1 witness shall not rise up against a man for any iniquity or for any sin. In any sin that he sinneth, at the mouth of 2 witnesses or at the mouth of 3 witnesses shall the matter be established. All right. And that's the main key. Well, all of them are pretty much the same, but that one really summarizes what we were reading with Paul's case, man. Let's read it again. 1 witness shall not rise up against a man for any iniquity or for any sin. If any sin that he sinneth, at the mouth of 2 witnesses or at the mouth of 3 witnesses shall the matter be established. Now they had the numbers, but they didn't have the evidence. So it was just talk. They had to prove that case because they had the witnesses, but they couldn't prove their case because everything they were saying about Paul was false. All right. Also going to grab one thing here. Okay. Exodus 20:16. It says, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. As a matter of fact, let me do this instead. Makes it easier because I want to get something here. All right. Close it up. All right. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. When you go into this word bear, all right, it says what? To answer, respond, testify, speak shall. You see, here it is again. To testify, respond as a witness. All right. So when you go back and get these other words, matter of fact, let's get witness. Okay. And it says what? Witness, testimony, evidence of things which they did not have. Witness of the people. They had those numbers, but they didn't have the evidence to substantiate, all these individuals with this case against Paul. Okay. And then when you get false, it goes into those other two words there we just read. The word there, shaquar. It says lie, deception, disappointment, falsehood. You see? Deception, what deceives or disappoints or betrays one? Look, deceit, fraud, wrong, fraudulently, wrongfully, falsehood, injurious in what? In testimony, you see? Testify falsehood, false oath, which they took, oath, a curse, they called it, right? To kill Paul and not to eat, or more so not to eat until they kill Paul. Swear falsely. And those leaders were down with it when they came to him with their plan. They were down with it. All right. It says falsity or falsehood or self-deceived prophets, lie, falsehood in general, false tongue. It also says in vain. All right. So yeah, when they pull that out, we can get this back in Acts 25 and 18, against whom when the accusers stood up, they brought none accusation of such things as I supposed. It says, but had certain questions against him of their own superstition. Oh yeah, let's get this word superstition. That's very important. All right, to make a point here with this superstition, right? It's straightforward, everything, blah, blah, blah. Let's get the word superstitious, all right? Because this connects back to, the faith, right? Having or showing a belief in superstitions, all right? Superstition, excessively credulous belief in and reverence for what? Supernatural beings. So this superstition, when we go back, goes back to what? The accusation about him preaching Yahushua being crucified and risen from the dead. Let's read it again. But has certain questions against him of their own superstition and of one Yahushua, which was dead, whom Paul affirmed to be alive. You see? That was their superstition. Okay, which this is not real, evidence in the case, man. But that's their superstition. It linked back to Yahushua, man. All right. So it says, verse 20 says, and because I doubted of such manner of questions, and we're going to have to face the same things, man. For the scriptures talk about for the testimony of Yahushua, right? Matter of fact, let me punch this up. Let's put greater than his master. Okay, jumping me around. All right, here we go. John 13:16. Most assuredly I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master, nor is he who sent greater than he who sent him. But here's the one we want in John 15:20. Remember the word that I said to you, a servant is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will also persecute you. If they kept my word, they will keep yours also. And we're going to teach the truth according to the gospel, right? We're going to teach Yahushua. And because of what we believe in, which is pretty much righteousness, okay, and because we believe in Yahushua as the Lord and Savior, the Messiah, right? Because well, actually, well, we don't even have to get that angle, because I was about to say, the modern day Pharaoh, but, because Babylon the Great is a revival of the ancient Rome, who will be seen as the new Caesars, okay, or the new kings, pretty much the banking families. Though they put up the president as a puppet, it would still go and link back to the banking families, man. And what did those wicked Jews back then say? We have no king but Caesar. These are those that are going to buckle under the system and take this man's micro C hip and connect themselves to his old beast system. The 2/3 of the Israelites. All right, they have no king but the banking families, and they're gonna solidify that by taking this man's device. And Lord, will He keep the spirit upon us to deny this man and everything he's offering? You see. And so because of what we believe in, all right, this scripture is going to come to play, man. John 15:20, also in Revelation. We're going to be taken to the courts and so on and so forth. All right. But he says that what? I believe that's in what? Luke. I'm going to give you a mouth that your adversary should not be able to gainsay nor resist. So we have no worries, man. All right. We trust the Lord. All right. The scriptures say, be ye not afraid, neither doubt. But yeah, that going back to verse 19, that superstitions roots back into dealing with Yahushua, man. And you have to understand when you go through the history, man, all right, how much these high priests hated Yahushua. Because once again, you have to understand, these high priests knew the law. They knew the scriptures. It was not that they did not believe in a Messiah coming or understand that. It's just that when the Messiah came, who he was is what they didn't believe. This was just the carpenter's son. That's what they didn't want to believe. They didn't want to believe that Yahushua was the Messiah because of who he was. See? So, yeah. So, going back to that, it says, but had certain questions against them of their own superstition and of one Yahushua, which was dead, whom Paul affirmed to be alive. And that's why the scriptures say, hold fast to what thou hast and let no man take thy crown. It says, and because I doubted of such manner of questions, I asked him whether he would go to Jerusalem and there be judged of these matters. But when Paul had appealed to be reserved unto the hearing of Augustus, I commanded him to be kept till I might send him to Caesar. We already clarified who the Caesar is. That was dealing with Nero. Okay? That was the Caesar, Nero. All right? Got two birds fighting on my side view mirror. Yeah, and then when you go into Augustus, so we pull this up, all right? Augustus, all right, where there's Sebastos, all right? The title of Roman emperors, you see, everybody took on the title Augustus, okay? And also we spoke about this before, dealing with these Caesars, there was a term called divus, right? D-I-V-U-S, which basically means divine. And these Caesars would declare themselves as divine, them and their families as divine, basically saying that we're gods, okay? And it says Augustine, an example taking its name from the emperor, you see, a title of honor which used to be given, which used to be given to certain legions or cohorts or battalions for valor. All right, so we don't need number 2, all right? But there you go, you see? So that's why we brought out the information before we start the chapter, so we could roll right into this. As a matter of fact, let's see what the other translations say. What is that, verse 21? See what the NLT says. But Paul appealed to have his case decided by the emperor, so I ordered that he be held in custody until I could arrange to send him to Caesar. See, but if we go to the AMP, I'm pretty sure it'll give us more. But when Paul appealed to be held in custody for a decision by the emperor Nero, I ordered him to be kept in custody until I could send him to Caesar. Caesar's talking about Nero. Augustus is also talking about Nero because he also took on that title. All right. Everybody took on the title Caesar as well as Augustus, okay, in their names and in their titles as Caesar, as king. All right. So that should make more sense to you. Then Agrippa said to Festus, I would like to hear the man myself. Tomorrow, Festus replied, you will hear him. Verse 23 says, so the next day, Agrippa and his sister, Bernice, came with great pageantry, and they went into the auditorium accompanied by the military commanders and the prominent men of the city. At the command of Festus, Paul was brought in. Then Festus said, King Agrippa, and all you gentlemen present with us, you see this man Paul, about whom all the Jewish people appealed to me, both at Jerusalem and here, loudly insisting that he ought not to live any longer. All right. It says, but I found that he had done nothing worthy of death. However, since he appealed to Emperor Nero, I decided to send him to Rome. But here's the pickle he found himself in the last 2 verses. But I have nothing specific about him to write to my Lord, so I have brought him before all of you, and especially before you, King Agrippa, so that after the investigation has taken place, I will have something to put in writing. So basically, he wanted to, he was going to send him to Nero, right? But he had to have a real valid reason to write and send him to Nero. But he couldn't find one because this went back to what? Jewish matters, right? Which was according to a spiritual matter, all right? The temple and this, that, and the third thing, teaching Yahushua and all these things. It wasn't a real case, considering Roman law, all right? It had nothing to do with Roman civil law or any kind of other type of Roman law that he could be truly tried and found, guilty to be put to death like they were seeking for. There was no accusation against him, and he couldn't find one. So now here you have Agrippa II, who's going to come into the picture, all right, in the next chapter, okay? All right, back with the fire truck. All right, so yeah, so he's saying that, hey, Agrippa, maybe you can question this man and find out the matter. So when I send him to Emperor Nero, I can actually have a valid reason why I'm sending him, along with whatever message or letter or however I'm going to do it. All right, a reason. All right, behind why this man is sent to you, in the courts. All right, before you. All right, which he appealed to you, but I gotta have a reason why I send him, and I don't have one. It says, but I have nothing specific about him to write to my Lord, so I have brought him before all of you, and especially before you, King Agrippa, so that after the investigation has taken place, I will have something to put in writing. For it seems absurd and unreasonable to me to send a prisoner to Rome without indicating the charges against him. Also, you have to keep in mind that Paul had Roman citizenship. So it is very important for them to have rhyme and reason behind everything, especially if they're going to try him, especially if the outcome of the trial was going to be death. All right. You have to have a proper case dealing with Roman citizenship. And, the Jews couldn't produce any evidence, and pretty much it was just false accusations. And we're going to have to face the same thing as we just mentioned, man. False accusations, all right? But the Lord says he's going to give us a mouth speaking wisdom that our adversary should not be able to gainsay nor resist. Now, some of us will actually still be put to death. That's in the scriptures, and become martyrs for this truth. But some of us, are not going to see death, all right? Whatever the case may be, we got to trust the Lord, man. Be ye not afraid, neither doubt, man. Says, of whom I have no certain thing to write unto my Lord, wherefore I have brought him forth before you, and especially before thee, O King Agrippa, that after examination had, I might have somewhat to write. For it seemed to me unreasonable to send a prisoner, and not withal to signify the crimes laid against him. All right. So that was the end of Acts chapter 25. It's basically pretty a smooth chapter, straightforward there. Just certain things that you have to understand reading that chapter. All right. So you won't get confused by it. And so we brought those things out through spirit. So Lord will, you edify to next time. Y'all, I'm going to say shalom.